Welcome, dear listener, to the Sleeping Hourglass. Tonight, we walk together into a tale of tenderness, memory, and devotion, a story rooted in Scotland's grey capital, Edinburgh, where mist clings to the stones and footsteps echo through narrow closes. It is there, in the 19th century, that a small Skye Terrier named Bobby kept a vigil so steady that it stretched beyond a single lifetime. His story is not merely about a dog, but about love that refuses to fade and the quiet power of loyalty that endures even when everything else must pass away. If you find peace here, if you feel at home in these whispered journeys, you are warmly invited to keep this little corner alive by subscribing, by liking, by returning whenever the weight of the world feels heavy, not as a duty, but as a gentle gesture, like leaving a light burning in a window so others can find their way home. The night presses softly upon Edinburgh, as though the sky itself leans down to listen to the city's heartbeat. A drizzle lingers in the air, mist rising like breath from the stones. Gas lamps glow with a muted amber haze, their light bending through fog and smoke. Hooves clatter on the cobbles, iron against stone, echoing between narrow closes. Wagons creak beneath the weight of goods from Leith, and voices rise from the taverns. Laughter, argument, and the weary sigh of men who have laboured long. This is a city alive, yet always wrapped in grey. Edinburgh in the 19th century is not the polished, stately place tourists will one day see. It is instead a living, pulsing body of stone, damp walls streaked with soot, smoke from 10,000 chimneys mingling with the sea air. The closes twist and wind like veins through the city, each leading to a pocket of life. A shoemaker bent at his last, a weaver's loom beating rhythm into the night, a mother rocking a child as rats scurry near the firewood. The old town stands high, its buildings piled upon each other like books stacked in haste, dark stairways cutting between them. Below, the new town stretches with neater lines, Georgian facades standing like proud gentlemen, orderly, measured, a dream of reason rising from the chaos of the older streets, yet the divide is not complete. Smoke drifts from both sides. Poverty and wealth share the same damp air. On the cobblestones, the world feels unshakable, ancient. As if the very stones have memory, they hold the sound of soldiers' boots, of preachers' steps, of merchants rushing to market, and of children skipping through puddles. They are witnesses, silent and patient, to lives that pass too quickly to leave more than a whisper. It is here, amid the labyrinth of closes and winds, that the tale begins, not with kings, nor battles, nor crowns of power, but with something smaller, humbler, and far more enduring. For history does not only live in palaces or parliaments. It also breathes in the unnoticed corners of cities, where footsteps echo and devotion takes root in the simplest of bonds. Edinburgh, in these years, is a place of growth. The railways are beginning to knit the nation together, steam rising like a herald of a new age, factories hum, and the city swells with labourers seeking work. Streets that once echoed with the clamour of carts now also hear the rumble of machines. Yet, for all its forward motion, Edinburgh remains deeply old. The stones remember Mary, Queen of Scots. They remember Covenanters dragged to their fate. They remember plagues, parades, and prayers. Time does not sweep clean here. It layers. The weather, too, shapes the city's spirit. The damp never truly lifts. Rain slicks the stones, mist blurs the outlines of the castle, and the wind carries salt from the Firth of Forth. Winters bite with a sharpness that seeps into bone. Summers are softer, yet even in warmth the skies often hang heavy with cloud. This greyness is not a flaw, but a character. A palette upon which lives are painted, subdued yet enduring. In the grass market, cattle are still sold, their lowing filling the air alongside the cries of butchers. In the cowgate, the poor huddle in crowded rooms, while above them, on George Street, gentlemen stroll with polished boots. On the Royal Mile, everything converges: merchants, ministers, beggars, and students weave together in the same fabric of life. And always, the sound of the kirk bells lingers, tolling morning, noon, and night, summoning hearts upward even as feet press downward upon the stones. Among these cobblestones, countless untold stories flicker and fade: a shoeless boy stealing bread, a washerwoman hanging linen in the meagre sun, a sailor whispering to his sweetheart before departing for months at sea. Their lives rarely reach the pages of history, yet they are the marrow of the city, the quiet continuity that outlives the names of statesmen. It is in this soil of ordinary life, damp and often harsh, that the seeds of extraordinary devotion take root. Soon, amid this mist and stone, a man will step into the story, a night watchman, modest in means, unnoticed by the powerful. And with him will walk a dog, small and unassuming, whose heart will one day echo more loudly than the tolling of any bell. But before their paths cross, it is the city itself we must dwell upon, for Edinburgh is more than a backdrop. It is a character, breathing, shaping, and witnessing. Without its cobbled streets, without its damp air, and its mingling of hardship and hope, the story could not take place. The cobblestones hold memory, and memory is the soil in which loyalty grows. Each stone underfoot seems to whisper of permanence, of lives gone yet not forgotten. And perhaps this is why the little dog's vigil will strike so deeply into the hearts of those who pass by. For in a city built on layers of the past, a creature who refuses to let memory fade becomes not only a mourner, but a mirror of the city itself. The mist drifts low, curling through the kirkyards, softening the outlines of tombstones. The castle looms above, its rock rising stark against the grey sky, timeless and watchful. Below, the closes darken as the lamps sputter into night. Edinburgh settles into its evening hush, a city of stone and silence, smoke and breath. It is here, on these damp streets, that devotion will take form. A bond of man and dog, humble and unnoticed at first, will one day turn the gaze of an entire world. But for now, the cobblestones simply wait, listening, as they have always done. The stones of Edinburgh hold their silence, keeping the memory of countless footsteps. Soon, among them, a new pair will arrive, a man of modest means, carrying loneliness in his pocket, and a story waiting to begin. The story of Edinburgh, with its stones and mist, narrows now to a single figure, a man who comes quietly into its streets with little wealth and less renown. His name is John Grey. To the world, he is not remarkable. He carries no noble title, no inheritance, no grand education. He is but one of many who drift into the city in search of work, of bread, of survival. Yet from such modest threads, history sometimes weaves its most enduring cloth. John's beginnings are shadowed with uncertainty. Records are faint, the kind that slip between the cracks of memory and bureaucracy. Some say he came from the countryside, drawn like many by the pull of Edinburgh's work and wages. Others imagine him as one of countless sons who left behind fields and family for the hope of a steadier life. Whatever the truth, we know this: He arrives with little more than his strength, his determination, and a willingness to take the labour others turn away from. In the mid-19th century, Edinburgh grows and strains under its own weight. The new town, with its proud facades, gleams with the vision of order and progress. But below, in the old town's shadowed winds, hardship presses heavily. For every gentleman who walks George Street with polished boots, a dozen labourers trudge Cowgate in worn shoes, their wages thin, their rooms crowded. John is not of the polished world. His lot is in the work that keeps the city's rhythm steady but unseen. It is work that begins in the night, when others turn their lamps down and let their thoughts drift toward dreams. John Gray is hired as a night watchman. His duty is simple but lonely, to walk the streets when they are most vulnerable, when merchants sleep and thieves stir, when storms prowl the closes and the fog turns lamps into pale halos. He must keep watch, eye sharp, boots steady, body willing even in the coldest hours. The city at night is not the same as the city by day. The daytime noise, the markets, the clatter of carts, the hum of trade, all fades into a muffled hush. What remains are footsteps, distant voices, the occasional cry of a newborn in some upper tenement. Shadows deepen between the stones, and mist curls low. It is here, in this twilight world, that John Gray makes his living. But living is not the same as belonging. The work feeds him, yes, but it does not fill the hollow places of the heart. Night after night, John keeps his rounds, lantern in hand, walking streets that hold more silence than conversation. Loneliness is his companion, and though he bears it with quiet resolve, it weighs upon him as surely as the damp air presses against the stones. The wages of a watchman are small, enough to keep him clothed and housed, but not enough to soften the harder edges of life. His meals are plain, his rooms modest. He is a man who asks little, for he knows little will be given, and yet within him lingers that universal human ache. The need for presence, for a bond that steadies the soul as much as bread steadies the body. It is in this space of emptiness that fate begins to stir, for companionship, when it arrives, often comes not with fanfare, but in the quiet crossing of paths. Some friendships begin with shared laughter, others with chance meetings in crowded places. For John Gray, it begins in the simplest form, the gaze of a small dog, sharp-eyed and curious, who follows him as though recognizing something kindred. But that moment belongs to a chapter yet to unfold. For now, we remain with John, a solitary figure whose footsteps echo softly through Edinburgh's streets, who keeps to his rounds with a constancy that mirrors the very rhythm of the city. He is not celebrated, he is not written about in newspapers, and yet he endures, his modesty sheltering him from pride, his labour anchoring him in a world that offers no luxury. There is a strange dignity in such obscurity. Cities are built not only by their architects and rulers, but by the countless hands that go unnamed. John Gray is one such man. He carries the weight of duty without spectacle, and in doing so, he becomes part of the quiet foundation upon which greater histories rest. His life is one among many, yet it is precisely this ordinariness that prepares the ground for something extraordinary. The streets he walks at night are more than stone and shadow. They are living corridors of memory, and as he keeps his rounds, John becomes woven into them. He passes Greyfriars Kirkyard, its gates closed in the hush of midnight, tombstones lined like rows of silent sentinels. He hears the distant bells, their toll rolling through the damp air like a reminder of eternity. He sees the dim figures of late workers or weary wanderers, each carrying burdens unseen, and he carries his own, the burden of solitude. Perhaps it is this solitude that sharpens his awareness of others. Perhaps it is the silence that makes him attuned to companionship when it finally comes. For there is a truth that lingers across time. The loneliest hearts are often the most tender when touched. And John Gray, in his modest means and humble duty, is not immune to the quiet, healing power of loyalty when it finds him. One can imagine him pausing, lantern light flickering on damp stones, breath visible in the cold. The city sleeps. He listens, ever watchful, yet in his chest stirs a longing that even vigilance cannot still. It is the longing not to be unseen, not to walk alone through life's darkened streets. Soon this longing will meet its answer, in the shape of a small Skye Terrier, with bright eyes and a devotion that will outlast even death. But tonight, John is still alone. Tonight, the cobblestones echo only with the sound of his own boots, steady and unremarkable, keeping time with the unseen heart of the city. And yet, in this ordinariness, history breathes. For the stories that endure are often born not in grand halls, but in the quiet persistence of ordinary souls. John Gray, a man of modest means, walks his rounds unaware that he is stepping toward a companionship that will one day capture the reverence of generations. The city holds its breath, waiting for their paths to cross. The watchman walks on, lantern flickering, his shadow long against the stones. Soon, a terrier's small paws will join those footsteps, and Edinburgh's nights will no longer belong to John Gray alone. The city is never truly silent, even when the bells cease their tolling and the markets fold into darkness. A hum lingers beneath the hush. Wind whispers through the winds, rain patters against shutters, a horse shifts restlessly in a stable. It is into this world of half sounds that John Gray walks his nightly rounds, lantern in hand, shoulders bent against the damp air. His footsteps fall steady, yet within him lies an emptiness that echoes more loudly than any clatter of hooves. It is into this emptiness that a small figure steps, 4 legs, a keen nose, ears sharp as sails catching the faintest sound. A Skye Terrier with fur the colour of weathered heather and eyes that glimmer like wet stone lingers on the edge of the lamplight. Perhaps he is drawn by the steady rhythm of John's walk. Perhaps it is hunger that first pulls him near, or the instinctive trust of a heart that knows kindness when it sees it. However it begins, the meeting of man and dog feels less like chance and more like a quiet convergence the city itself has been waiting to witness. The terrier keeps his distance at first. He follows, shadow-like, as John makes his rounds through damp closes and along the high street spine. Each time the watchman turns, the dog pauses. Tail low, eyes fixed with patient curiosity. John notices, of course. He slows his step, crouches once with a quiet word, though the terrier does not yet come close enough to touch. But night after night, the pattern repeats. A shadow of 4 legs at his heels, a flicker of eyes in the lamplight, a small form keeping pace with his solitude. It does not take long for companionship to find its shape. Hunger breaks shyness. John, with his meagre meal wrapped in cloth, begins leaving a scrap or 2 at the edge of his lantern's glow, a crust of bread, a sliver of meat. The terrier accepts with gratitude, edges nearer, and by the turn of another week, the distance between them closes. Where John walks, the terrier now trots. Where John pauses, lantern raised, the terrier sits alert. Ears pricked as though he too shares the duty of watching. He earns his name soon enough. In Scotland, a wee Bobby is a familiar word for a watchman, a guardian of the night. And so John, half in jest but with growing fondness, calls his small companion Bobby. The name suits him, for though he is not a man, he is already proving himself a keeper of vigil. From that moment, the two become a pair inseparable. Edinburgh begins to notice. In the Cowgate, butchers smile to see the dog pacing beside the watchman's boots. Children tug at their mother's sleeves, pointing to the odd couple with delight. Even the tavern dwellers, spilling ale into the streets, tip their hats at the sight. A lonely man no longer walking alone. The nights grow less heavy. Where once silence pressed too thickly, now the gentle padding of paws fills the gaps. Where once the cold seeped deep into John's bones, now a small warm body curls close when he rests for a moment on a bench or by the kirkyard wall. The bond is not dramatic, not forged in grand gestures, but in the quiet repetition of companionship. Step by step, round by round, Bobby makes the night feel less like exile and more like belonging. There is a rhythm to their work. Lantern light sways across slick stones, casting long shadows. John's boots strike steady, and beside him Bobby keeps perfect pace. The two move as though tethered by invisible thread. They learn each other's silences, each other's ways of listening. John speaks little, but his hand often finds the terrier's head. Bobby answers not with words, but with steadfast presence. Together, they embody a truth as old as time, that companionship does not need language to be complete. Skye Terriers are known for their loyalty, bred in the Hebrides to guard farms and keep watch against foxes. They carry within them a spirit of devotion. Bobby is no exception. He is small, yes, his frame slight compared to the weight of the city's labour. But his heart holds a constancy greater than the tallest of towers. He learns the streets as well as John himself, the echo of the Royal Mile, the twisting passages of the closes, the solemn hush of Greyfriars Kirkyard at midnight. He moves with assurance, as though the city belongs as much to him as it does to his master. Some nights the fog drifts thick and heavy, swallowing light, muting every sound. In such hours, John leans upon his lantern and Bobby presses close, a small anchor against the vast emptiness. Other nights, storms lash the stones, rain pelting so hard it seems the very sky is cracking. Yet through it all, the terrier remains, ears flattened, paws soaked, never once retreating. His loyalty is not chosen anew each night. It is constant, unquestioning, unbroken. Word spreads of the dog who keeps watch with the watchman. Soon they are known not as two, but as one. John Grey and his Bobby. People say as though the names have fused. Bakers leave a crust out by the door. Children call greetings when they pass. Even the city guards nod in respect. The pair, once unnoticed, become part of the fabric of Edinburgh's nights, woven into its memory. And within John something shifts. Loneliness, once a steady ache, eases. He finds himself speaking softly to Bobby, sharing thoughts he never spoke aloud before. He smiles more, though no one is there to witness but the terrier. In the steady presence of this small creature, he discovers that even the hardest life can soften when touched by devotion. Years will later distill their story into legend, polishing it until it gleams with symbolism. But in these early days, it is not legend, it is simply life. A man of modest means and a dog who chooses him, walking together through rain and mist, lantern glow and shadow. This is how the bond begins. not with grandeur, not with proclamation, but with the simple, enduring rhythm of two beings finding solace in each other's presence. And as the nights fold into months, and the city continues its ceaseless hum, the partnership deepens into something unspoken yet unbreakable. The cobblestones remember it. Each step taken together leaves an imprint not only on stone, but on memory. And one day, when John's steps falter and cease, Bobby will continue alone, carrying their rhythm in his paws. But that day is still far. For now, the watchman and his terrier keep vigil side by side, bound by devotion so quiet it might be mistaken for ordinary, until time proves it otherwise. The lantern swings, boots strike stone, paws patter beside them. In the hush of Edinburgh's nights, man and dog move as one, a bond deepening toward a love that will be tested when illness comes with winter's breath. Night descends upon Edinburgh not with sudden darkness, but with a slow dimming, as though the city itself exhales and lowers its eyes. The last vendors shutter their stalls, laughter fades from the closes, and the day's smoke folds into the mist that gathers in the winds. Then, one by one, the gas lamps flicker to life. They burn like small amber moons, their halos breaking the fog into circles of trembling light. This is when the city changes. Daytime belongs to commerce, to trade, to noise and bustle. Night, however, belongs to shadows, to whispers, to secrets, to the quiet footsteps of men who labour unseen. It belongs to John Grey, and now to Bobby, the small terrier who walks faithfully at his side. Their rounds begin when others retreat indoors. John lifts his lantern, its flame joining the line of gaslights, and sets his pace against the cobblestones. Bobby trots in rhythm, his paws making a softer echo beside the steady tread of boots. Together, they enter the city's hidden hours. The streets are not empty, though they seem so at first glance. A late carriage rattles over stones, wheels shuddering as it climbs the steep incline of the Royal Mile. A woman carrying laundry hurries through the mist, shawl pulled tightly, her footsteps quick as though chased by the night itself. In a tavern doorway, two men argue in slurred tones before parting into the dark. John watches it all, noting faces, noting movements. His duty not to interfere unless need demands, but to keep vigil, to be the eyes the city requires when its own are closed in sleep. Bobby, too, keeps watch. His ears twitch at the faintest sound, the scrape of a rat, the clink of glass, the shifting of a shadow where none should be. Sometimes he growls low, and John knows to raise his lantern higher, to scan the alley more carefully. Other times he relaxes, tail wagging, and John smiles, trusting the terrier's sharper instincts. In this partnership, each relies on the other, man and dog bound by duty, yet more deeply by trust. There are nights of calm, when the city seems to sigh itself into slumber, and the rounds feel like a gentle walk-through dream. But there are other nights, too, nights when storms rage, rain lashing so fiercely that the lamps sputter and smoke. John pulls his coat tighter, his lantern nearly blown out, and still he walks. Bobby, drenched but determined, does not falter. They press forward together, soaked yet steadfast, two small figures against the vastness of the storm. There are fogs as well, thick and heavy, rolling from the Firth of Forth like a tide of silence. The lamps dim into faint blurs, their circles shrinking until they seem like floating eyes in the gloom. In these hours, the city feels like another world, shapeless and uncertain, yet John's boots strike steady and Bobby's paws keep close. the bond between them clearer than the stones underfoot. Now and then, danger breaks the monotony. A thief, thinking the night his ally, slips through shadows with intent unkind. John's lantern light catches him, and the watchman's steady voice warns that he is seen. Sometimes it is enough. The figure flees, swallowed by the dark. Other times there is confrontation, a chase through closes, the sound of rapid boots, Bobby barking sharp and urgent. In such moments, loyalty is not passive. The little dog becomes a guardian, his voice piercing the stillness, his presence fierce for one so small. Together, they make the night less welcoming to those who would use it for harm. Yet even more than storms or thieves, it is the silence that defines their rounds. Silence not as absence, but as presence, a great, listening stillness that settles upon the stones. In this silence, John often finds his thoughts wandering to the life he left behind, to the paths he might have walked had fortune dealt him another hand. And always his gaze drops to the small creature at his side, and his heart softens. For in Bobby he finds not only companionship, but a reflection of loyalty itself, simple, unadorned, unwavering. It is here, in these hours when most of Edinburgh sleeps, that love deepens. Not the love of romance, nor the fleeting warmth of casual friendship, but the enduring bond that grows in the shared keeping of watch. Each night they walk together, the trust between them strengthens. Each night the silence binds them tighter, until the thought of separation feels as impossible as the city without its stones. Others begin to notice. A baker rising before dawn sees them pass, and later tells a neighbour of the watchman and his dog. A milkmaid, carrying pails through the chill morning, watches Bobby leap lightly over puddles to keep pace with John's stride. Slowly, word spreads. There is a man who does not walk alone. There is a dog whose faith keeps time with the city's heartbeat. But the truest witnesses are the stones themselves. They feel the steady tread of boots, the light patter of paws, the lantern glow brushing their damp surfaces. They carry the imprint of devotion night after night, so that even in stillness they remember. The cobblestones, eternal and unyielding, know the secret that in the midst of loneliness and labour, two small lives have become one rhythm, one vigil, one quiet love. These are the nights on watch, not heroic in the eyes of history, not grand enough for monuments, but profound in the quiet way they shape hearts. For what is loyalty, if not the choice to remain present, to endure the storms, to walk faithfully beside another through the shifting hours of darkness? And so John and Bobby keep their rounds. The lamps dim, the bells toll, the city exhales into silence. Step by step, vigil by vigil, devotion turns into a force strong enough to resist even the passing of time. The watchman and his terrier walk on, lantern swinging, paws steady, their silence carrying a depth words cannot hold. Yet even as loyalty deepens, winter waits at the city's edge, carrying with it an illness that will soon test the bond they have built. The winter of Edinburgh does not arrive suddenly, but with slow insistence. First, there are the early evenings, when the gas lamps burn before supper, then the frosts that trace delicate white lace upon the windows of tenements. Finally, the wind sharpens, sliding like a blade down the narrow closes, curling around the ankles of those who hurry home. It is a season that does not ask permission to enter. It claims the city, stone by stone, until every alley breathes cold. For John Gray, the winter is no stranger. As a night watchman, he has walked through many seasons. each marked by the rhythm of his boots against the cobbles. He knows how to draw his coat tighter, how to stamp warmth into his feet, how to let the damp settle without complaint. Yet this winter feels different. There is a heaviness in his chest, a shortness of breath that steals upon him when the wind rises. The cough that begins in his throat lingers longer than it should. Beside him, Bobby senses it first. The little terrier does not reason as men do, but he listens with his whole being. He hears the rasp of John's breathing in the silent hours, feels the falter in his step as they circle the quiet streets. Bobby presses closer to his master's side, as if the touch of his small body might lend strength. The city itself seems to conspire with the illness. The fog thickens in the winds, damp seeps into the bones, and the bitter smoke of coal fires curls low. The poor cough in their bedsits, their ailments muffled by stone walls. Illness, like hunger, is a common guest in Edinburgh, especially among those who cannot afford doctors or respite. John is such a man, a worker whose wages sustain only the barest needs. For him, there is no retreat into warmth, no holiday from labour. Night after night, he lifts his lantern and steps into the cold. Yet the body has limits, and his begins to bow beneath the weight of years spent in damp air. His cough grows harsher, echoing against the closes, scattering the silence like broken glass. Bobby looks up at him with searching eyes, ears pricked, tail lowered. He does not understand sickness, only that something threatens the man who has been his constant world. In the quiet of their rounds, John often pauses now, leaning against the cold stone of a wall to catch his breath. The lantern light flickers against his worn face, etching deeper lines than before. His hands, once steady, tremble slightly as he grips the handle. He murmurs to Bobby in a hoarse voice, words of reassurance more for himself than for the dog. The city passes on, mostly unaware of his struggle. To the market folk and the tradesmen, he is still the watchman they glimpse at dawn, wary but steady. To the children, he is simply the man with the dog. Life rarely pauses to notice the slow fading of a solitary labourer. Yet for Bobby, every change is noticed, every weakness recorded in the silent ledger of a dog's heart. At home, such as it is, John's condition does not improve. The small lodging where he rests offers little warmth. The firewood is rationed, the blankets thin. Bobby curls against him through the night, sharing what little heat a small body can give. The dog listens to every breath, every cough, every restless turn. In his nearness, there is both comfort and a quiet sorrow, for he does not know how to keep his master from slipping away. Winter deepens. Snow falls in soft sheets, muting the city's clamour. The kirkyard of Greyfriars lies under a blanket of white, its stones jutting like teeth through the drifts. John still walks past its gates, lantern swaying, Bobby trotting beside him. Yet his steps grow shorter, his shoulders stoop. Sometimes he pauses to gaze into the churchyard, his expression unreadable. Perhaps he contemplates the peace that lies there, or perhaps he is simply catching breath. Neighbours begin to notice. A butcher slips him extra meat, shaking his head at the pallor of the watchman's face. A kind woman leaves a flask of broth at his door. But kindness cannot undo the toll of years, nor heal lungs worn thin by damp air. John Grey is fading, and all can see it, though none know how swiftly. For Bobby, time blurs. Each day is a continuation of devotion. Whether John's step is strong or faltering, Bobby follows. Whether the night is crisp or storm-laden, Bobby endures. The bond between them does not question, does not falter. It simply remains a thread woven tighter as the fabric of John's life begins to fray. On certain nights, when the cough racks him violently, John kneels to gather Bobby into his arms. The terrier licks his face, ears pressed flat, eyes wide with concern. John whispers words too soft for others to hear. Confessions of gratitude, fragments of memory, prayers half formed. He knows what the dog cannot, that the end is near. There is something sacred in these nights of quiet struggle. No monument marks them, no witness records them. Yet in the darkness, a man and his dog hold vigil against the creeping shadow. Love, in its simplest form, becomes resistance. As the winter stretches on, John no longer hides his weakness. He coughs openly, leaning heavily on his lantern staff. His face grows thinner, his eyes more distant. Still, he persists. For work is survival, and stopping is not an option. But deep within, he feels the final winter settling in his bones. One evening, after a particularly bitter wind, John lingers longer than usual at the kirkyard gates. Bobby presses against his leg, waiting. The lantern light flickers upon the snow-covered stones, upon names half forgotten. John sighs, a sound weighted with both weariness and surrender. Perhaps he knows that soon he will not pass by these gates as a watchman, but enter them as one of the silent. In the stillness of that moment, the bond between man and dog glows brightest. It is not a grand gesture, not a declaration, but a quiet presence, one life tethered to another by loyalty stronger than words. And so the days shorten, the cough deepens, and the shadow lengthens. Bobby remains close, ever watchful, ever faithful. The little dog cannot stop what comes, but he can witness it, he can stay. And in staying, he transforms sorrow into devotion, fragility into love. The winter does not relent, and neither does time. John Gray's strength ebbs, like a lantern burning low. Soon the city will know of his passing. Soon the kirkyard gates will open to receive him. But for now, in this chapter of slow fading, what remains is the presence of a dog, steadfast, silent, unyielding. The cough echoes against the stone walls of Edinburgh, and the little dog listens. Soon the city will carry his master into the quiet earth, and Bobby will face the grave at Greyfriars. The earth is cold even in daylight. Edinburgh's sky hangs low with winter clouds, their grey weight pressing down upon the city. Snow lingers in the corners of the kirkyard, softening the outlines of the gravestones. On this day, John Gray is carried through the iron gates of Greyfriars, not as the watchman making his nightly rounds, but as one who will walk no more. The mourners gather with quiet steps, neighbours from his lodging, fellow workers who once nodded to him in passing, the butcher who spared him scraps of meat, a few children who knew him as the man with the little dog. Their presence is simple, unadorned. John Gray was not a man of wealth or renown. His funeral is modest, his coffin plain. Yet still, there is a dignity in the way the procession moves, as if even the humblest life deserves reverence when it comes to rest. Bobby trots beside them, bewildered. The terrier does not understand the rituals of mourning, only that the man he followed faithfully now lies silent. He presses against the legs of those walking, ears flicking at the solemn sound of boots crunching on frost. When the coffin is lowered, Bobby edges forward, nose lifted, eyes intent. Something has changed in the air, something final. The minister speaks in steady tones, words of scripture that drift upward and are caught by the branches of bare winter trees. His voice is not loud, but it carries the weight of centuries of burials in this ground. Greyfriars has welcomed thousands before John and will welcome thousands more. Its stones lean with age, its soil holds generations. To be laid here is to be gathered into the long memory of the city. The mourners bow their heads. Some whisper prayers, others simply stand in silence. Then, one by one, they turn and leave. Life calls them back to their work, their homes, their ordinary tasks. Death interrupts, but it does not halt the living for long. Soon the kirkyard grows quiet, save for the whisper of wind and the faint cry of crows overhead. But one mourner remains. Bobby sits by the mound of freshly turned earth, his body small against the stone markers that rise like sentinels around him. He does not understand the rituals of burial, but he understands presence. His master has gone beneath the earth, and so Bobby stays above it. He curls against the cold ground, tail tucked, eyes fixed on the place where John now rests. At first, no one notices. The gravedigger passes by, thinking the dog will leave once hunger calls him away. A few children, lingering at the gates, point at him and whisper, but then they too are called home. The churchyard settles into its usual rhythm. Crows flapping between trees, wind rustling through iron railings. Distant bells marking the hour. Yet in the corner where John Grey lies, a new rhythm begins, the quiet vigil of a dog who will not abandon his place. Day fades into evening. The gas lamps flicker to life beyond the kirkyard walls, their glow casting a pale haze through the mist. The gates close with a groan of iron. Still Bobby does not stir. Through the night he remains, body pressed close to the mound as though to keep it warm. The frost hardens, the wind rises, yet he endures. This is the first night of many. To the city, it seems at first an ordinary thing, a dog lingering where his master was laid. Such sights are not unheard of, but as days turn to weeks, whispers begin. People passing the kirkyard notice the small figure curled by one grave. They remark upon it in the taverns, in the markets, on the walks home from work. The watchman's dog, they say. Still there? There is something both tender and unsettling in it. For while men leave graves behind, dogs do not. Bobby's refusal to go unsettles the rhythm of forgetting. Each day he sits, each night he returns, as if declaring that love cannot be buried as swiftly as a coffin lowered into earth. Greyfriars itself becomes a different place through his presence. Once, its stones spoke only of the past, their names fading, their stories forgotten. Now, one small dog brings life into the silence. Visitors pause at the sight of him, their own hearts stirred by the persistence of devotion. It is as though Bobby becomes a living gravestone, testifying not with carved words but with steadfast presence. And yet, he is not a monument. He is a creature of flesh and warmth, with bright eyes that search for the one who does not return. Sometimes he whines softly, a sound that carries like a prayer through the frosted air. Sometimes he rests his head upon his paws, gaze never leaving the mound. Always he remains, as if waiting for a command he will never hear again. The city continues around him. Carriages rattle on the cobblestones, merchants call out their wares, children chase hoops in the closes. Time does not pause, but within the kirkyard, Bobby keeps his vigil. His faith carves out a space untouched by the world's haste. As weeks pass, people begin to slip food to him, a scrap of meat, a piece of bread. He accepts it, but never strays far from the grave. Hunger may be met by the kindness of strangers, but loyalty anchors him to the place of loss. Winter deepens still further. Snow buries the stones in white, yet a small path remains visible where Bobby circles the grave, pressing the snow down with his steps. The image is haunting, a ring of devotion etched in frost, a dog's silent covenant with the dead. There are those who shake their heads, calling it foolish. A dog cannot understand death, they say, but there are others who pause longer, their own eyes glistening. Perhaps they recognize in Bobby's vigil a reflection of their own longings, to be remembered, to be awaited, to not vanish into the silence without trace, and so, unnoticed at first but slowly becoming known, a story begins to take root. The tale of the watchman's dog spreads through Edinburgh like a soft murmur. No one knows how long it will last, or what shape it will take, but already something has begun, a legend written not in ink but in loyalty. For now it is only this, a small dog by a mound of earth beneath the grey Scottish sky, refusing to leave. The first vigil has begun, and the world does not yet know how long it will endure. But when the kirkyard gates close and the city sleeps, Bobby stays, and the first night alone drifts quietly into history. Time does not linger for grief. It moves onward, unfolding days into months, months into years, regardless of who waits behind. At Greyfriars Kirkyard, the stones know this rhythm well. They wear snow in winter, moss in spring, flowers in summer, and falling leaves in autumn. Each season drapes its garment over the resting dead, and through them all, one small dog remains by a single grave, as constant as the shadow of the church tower. Bobby's vigil stretches beyond that first night, beyond the second. What began as a bewildered refusal to leave becomes a rhythm of life. Morning finds him still curled by the mound. Evening sees him return when the gates close. The circle of his devotion hardens like the very stone beneath him. Winter is cruelest. Snow buries the kirkyard in silence, muffling footsteps, softening inscriptions. The wind slices down from the castle rock, carrying with it the chill of the highlands. Bobby weathers it with his small frame, fur matted with frost, eyes half shut against the sting. Sometimes children, walking past, toss him scraps of bread or meat. Sometimes the caretaker spares him a bone. Yet hunger alone could not explain his persistence. Many a stray has wandered off for an easier life, but Bobby remains, tethered not by chain but by memory. When spring comes, Greyfriars changes its breath. Grass pushes through the earth, green against the grey stones. Crocuses and daffodils tremble in the breeze, their colours startling after months of monotony. Bobby lifts his head to the warmth, blinking into the light, yet he does not wander. He walks the boundary of John Gray's grave, nose to the soil, as though measuring its edges anew. Then he curls again into his watch. By summer, the kirkyard hums with life. Bees drift among the blooms, children play along the railings, and visitors linger in the shade of ancient trees. The city itself grows busier in these months, its streets alive with travellers, markets, and music carried on warm air. Still, the little dog remains unchanged in his purpose. The warmth brings him ease, perhaps, but not distraction. To him, the grave is not merely earth, it is a heartbeat remembered, a world preserved. Then autumn descends, and the air sharpens. Leaves gather in russet piles against the walls. The grass fades, the flowers wither. Rain returns, steady and unrelenting, tapping upon stone like the slow fingers of time. Through all of it, Bobby endures. His form becomes a fixture as natural as the kirkyard's ravens. It is during these seasons that the people of Edinburgh truly begin to take notice. At first, They remark only in passing. There's the dog again, still at the grave. But as months turn into years, the story deepens. Curiosity becomes wonder. Wonder becomes reverence. For in Bobby's steadfast presence, people glimpse something rare, loyalty unbroken by time. Merchants passing the kirkyard speak of him to customers. Children tell the tale to friends, wide-eyed with fascination. Writers jot notes about him in letters. Travellers, upon hearing whispers, stop to see for themselves the small terrier who does not leave. His name spreads quietly, like a secret carried on the wind. Yet for Bobby, none of this matters. He does not seek an audience, nor does he understand the reverence building around him. His world is simple, bounded by a grave, a memory, and the passage of seasons. Fame is for men. Devotion is for hearts that cannot forget. The townsfolk begin to help him survive. The butcher on Candlemaker Row slips him bones. A nearby inn leaves water for him. Children reach through the gates with crumbs. Sometimes a kindly hand scratches his head, though he always returns quickly to his post. He accepts their kindness, yet never wavers from his place. Greyfriars itself seems to bend around him. The caretaker grows accustomed to his presence, tolerating what at first seemed strange. The ministers, walking the paths, pause to regard him with softened eyes. Even the stern stones seem to acknowledge the small figure who honors them by refusing to let memory fade. Seasons roll onward, winters bring harsh winds, summers bring blossoms, but the rhythm of waiting remains. 4 years pass, then 5. Bobby grows older, his coat greyer, his step slower, but his resolve does not waver. He becomes a quiet guardian of memory, a keeper of grief turned into love. In his vigil, there is a mirror for the people who watch him. They see in his faithfulness something they long for themselves. The hope that love, once given, will not vanish with death. They whisper his story not out of pity, but because it speaks to their own unspoken desires. In Bobby, they see the possibility that loyalty may outlast absence, that devotion may be stronger than forgetting. The kirkyard, once merely a place of endings, begins to draw visitors for the sake of the little dog. Travellers come to Edinburgh and are told, "You must see the graveyard, where a terrier keeps watch." Children press their faces to the railings, eyes wide. Even strangers who never knew John Grey feel a stirring when they behold Bobby curled by the grave. Through seasons of waiting, Bobby transforms. He is no longer simply a watchman's dog. He becomes a city's symbol, a silent preacher of fidelity. His sermon is not spoken, yet it is heard in every corner of Edinburgh. And still he waits. The grass rises and falls, flowers bloom and die, snow covers and melts, leaves fall and scatter. Each season leaves its mark upon the kirkyard, but Bobby's presence endures like an unbroken line through time. His small form becomes a thread woven into the very fabric of Greyfriars. There is a quiet grandeur in it, not the grandeur of kings or monuments, but of something humbler, deeper. A dog who refuses to leave speaks more powerfully than speeches or statues. His waiting becomes an emblem not just of loyalty, but of the longing that defines all love, the refusal to let go, even when letting go is inevitable. Years pass. Whispers grow into stories. Stories ripple outward, reaching beyond Edinburgh. Visitors take with them the tale of a dog who waits. They write it in letters, share it by firelight, carry it across oceans. What began as a single vigil in a small kirkyard begins to echo across the world. And still, Bobby does not know he is legend. He knows only the soil beneath him, the absence above, and the rhythm of waiting. Each day, each season, he lives the same truth. Love, once rooted, does not uproot itself. As the seasons continue their endless turning, the little dog remains, a presence so steady that even time itself seems to pause when one looks at him. In his endurance, he becomes more than a mourner. He becomes memory itself. The seasons pass, yet Bobby does not. And in his stillness, the city begins to see him not as a stray, but as a gentle guardian, a keeper of memory whose devotion whispers softly into every Edinburgh street. The years have already begun to settle like mist upon Greyfriars Kirkyard, and yet the little dog remains. Bobby, with his wiry coat and unwavering eyes, holds his post with a constancy that astonishes even those who walk past him daily. He is not a stray in the ordinary sense, ragged and lost in search of shelter, but something else entirely. He is a figure of remembrance, a small creature embodying the weight of a devotion so steadfast that the city itself cannot ignore it. At first, it is the butchers who notice him. In the early hours, as they carry their wares through the streets, they see the dog curled by the gate, waiting for the churchyard to open. His ribs begin to show, thin against the cold Scottish air, and perhaps it is pity at first that moves their hands. A scrap of meat, a bone heavy with marrow, tossed gently at his feet. But soon it becomes habit. Day after day, Bobby is fed not only from necessity but from reverence. For even the hardened butcher, whose life is marked by knives and carcasses, senses that here, in this small dog, lies a story worth protecting. Children are next. They gather in small knots, pressing their noses to the iron bars of the kirkyard fence. Some whisper, some giggle, but all fall into a quiet hush when Bobby stirs and turns his gaze toward them. They know, even without the language of adults, that he is waiting. Their games pause, their laughter softens, and when they run off again down the closes and wins, they carry with them a memory of him, a story to tell at home about the dog who waits, always waits, for someone who will not return. Soon, mothers send their children back with bits of bread. Old men slip crumbs from their pockets. A merchant, his hands still scented with ink and parchment, leans down to pat Bobby's head as if drawing strength from that small form pressed faithfully to the ground. The city's people, who often move briskly through their days with burdens heavy on their shoulders, begin to pause. They stop to look, to wonder, to feel, for Edinburgh itself is no stranger to sorrow. The city's stones have absorbed centuries of loss, plagues that emptied closes, wars that scarred hearts, poverty that left families with nothing but hunger. Perhaps that is why Bobby's vigil strikes so deep. In his loyalty, the people recognize their own yearning, that someone, somewhere, might hold them in memory even when they are gone. He becomes, without ever intending it, a guardian not only of one man's grave, but of the city's collective longing for permanence in a world that erases too quickly. Greyfriars Kirkyard, once only a resting place for the dead, begins to feel different. Its silence is no longer only of mourning, but of presence. Visitors remark upon the strange comfort of seeing the dog still there, day after day, through rain and snow, through heat and frost. The grave is no longer forgotten in a crowded field of stone. It is watched, attended, remembered. In this way, Bobby tends not only to John Gray's memory, but to the very fabric of Edinburgh itself. The newspapers, always eager for stories, begin to whisper about him. A paragraph here, a column there, until the tale spreads like smoke through the streets. The readers nod and smile, for they already know him. They have seen him with their own eyes, yet to see him in print feels like an acknowledgement that his vigil is not only personal but communal. His presence is no longer an oddity, it is a testament. By now, the seasons have etched themselves into the rhythm of Bobby's waiting. Winter coats the kirkyard in snow, and he huddles close against the stone, his breath forming small clouds in the stillness. Spring brings blossoms that scatter across the graves, and Bobby lies among them unmoved. Summer invites tourists and chatter, yet he remains as steady as the walls of the church itself. And when autumn arrives, with its red leaves falling like whispered farewells, Bobby's fur is streaked with the grey of age. Though his purpose does not falter, it is during these years that Bobby ceases to be merely a dog. He becomes a mirror in which the people of Edinburgh glimpse their own hearts. They begin to bring him not only food but protection. When the weather turns cruel, someone lays down straw near the gate. When snow buries the paths, hands clear a small space for him. When rain pours in torrents, a shopkeeper offers a dry corner, though Bobby never stays long. His place is always at the grave, and so the city, little by little, adopts him. He belongs to no single family, but to all. He is not claimed, but cherished. Bobby does not ask for this. He never seeks affection, never strays far in pursuit of companionship. Yet companionship comes to him, as if the people themselves are drawn into the circle of loyalty he has woven. He is the quiet guardian not only of John Grey, but of the fragile, enduring hope that love, whether of man or beast, can outlast even death. Travellers begin to hear the tale. A visitor from London writes of the Skye Terrier, who keeps his vigil in Edinburgh. A woman from America sketches his form in her journal, sending the drawing across the ocean to those who cannot see him. Bobby, unaware of his fame, simply waits. Yet in the spreading of his story, he gathers strangers into his watch. Hearts far beyond the kirkyard begin to feel what Edinburgh already knows, that in the silence of one dog's devotion lies a sermon stronger than any spoken word. The people begin to speak of him not as a stray, but as a guardian, a gentle keeper of memory. When they pass Greyfriars, they lower their voices. When they bring their children to see him, they do so as if entering a sacred place. Even laughter around Bobby carries a hush, a reverence. For in his presence, even the restless city feels the weight of stillness, the reminder that loyalty, once given, can become eternal. As years pass, Edinburgh itself changes, railways expand, shops multiply, the hum of progress grows louder. Yet amid all the noise, Bobby remains unchanged. He is a fixed point in a city rushing toward modernity, a reminder that not all value lies in newness. Some treasures endure precisely because they do not change. In the end, Bobby becomes less of a curiosity and more of a symbol. He is Edinburgh's gentle guardian, watching over not only one grave, but over the city's own fragile memory of devotion. He keeps alive the hope that even in a world of constant departure, something or someone might stay. And so, as the city leans in to care for the little dog who refuses to leave, Bobby's vigil becomes not only his own, but theirs as well. Yet time does not pause, and soon the quiet question will rise: how long can even the most faithful guardian endure? The world does not stand still, not even for grief. Seasons move in their quiet procession, marking time with frost and blossom, with rain that swells the earth and sunlight that lingers late into the summer evenings. Edinburgh, restless and alive, continues to expand, its streets growing busier, its chimneys releasing ever more smoke into the sky. Children who once pressed their small faces to the kirkyard gate now walk as young men and women through those same streets. Yet the little dog remains. Bobby waits. The first years after John Grey's burial are filled with whispers and glances. Curiosity at the dog who refuses to leave. But curiosity, like all things, fades. What astonishes at first eventually becomes part of the landscape. And so, Bobby settles into the rhythm of permanence. He is no longer a novelty, but a fixture. Just as the stone walls of Greyfriars stand without question, so does he. Time leaves its mark. His once bright coat begins to dull, silver creeping through the wiry strands. His step grows slower, though it is steady still. Where once he bounded toward the butcher's with youthful eagerness, now he walks with the careful dignity of age. Yet the essence of him, the steady flame of loyalty, remains untouched. The years may shape his body, but they cannot bend his devotion. 14 winters pass. Each one lays its weight upon him, yet he endures. Snow drifts into the kirkyard, burying the stones in white silence. Bobby curls close to the grave, his body a small, warm barrier against the cold. In spring, when flowers open among the headstones, he lies still in the same place, as if the changing colours are no more than decoration upon his vigil. Summer brings long hours of heat, when the stones radiate warmth and flies hum in the air. Bobby pants softly, but he does not move away. Autumn follows, scattering leaves like faded letters across the ground. And again, winter returns. In these long cycles, time becomes like pages of a book turning. Each season is a chapter, each year, a volume added to the shelves of the city's memory. Bobby's vigil is the thread that binds them, the unchanging sentence repeated again and again upon the parchment of time. The people of Edinburgh grow accustomed to him. They pass him in silence, nodding as one might nod to an old neighbour, a familiar presence whose constancy brings comfort. He is no longer merely the dog who waits, but a reminder that amidst the endless changes of life, something can remain steadfast. To the widows who pass through the kirkyard gates, he is a balm. To the children who return as adults and find him still there, he is a marvel. To travellers, he is a story to be carried home, proof that devotion does not wither even when years stretch long. The world beyond the kirkyard grows restless. New laws, new technologies, new ideas all sweep through Edinburgh, pulling the city forward into the modern age. But Bobby's world does not change. His kingdom is small, a patch of earth by a gravestone, the iron gates of the churchyard, the familiar footsteps of those who feed him. He is not concerned with the future. His loyalty anchors him to the past. And yet, in his stillness, he becomes a mirror. Those who look upon him cannot help but measure themselves against his devotion. 14 years. How many promises have men broken in such a span? How many friendships have faded? How many loves grown cold? Yet here, in the shape of one small terrier, is a reminder of what endures when all else fails. He waits, and in his waiting, he rebukes the hurried forgetfulness of mankind. The seasons mark his age, not only in his body, but in his spirit. He grows slower, perhaps, but also more solemn, more resolute. If once his waiting was instinct, now it has become identity. He is no longer simply John Grey's dog. He is loyalty itself, carved into living form. Children of a new generation learn his story from their parents, who once stood as children themselves watching him through the bars. They point him out with reverence. That is Bobby, the little dog who waits. Their voices carry awe, as though he is less an animal and more a legend walking quietly in their midst. In this way, the city teaches itself through him, handing down not only food and care but meaning. As Bobby grows older, he feels the years settle into his bones. His steps are shorter, his pauses longer. On certain mornings, the climb from the gate to the grave seems more difficult than before. But he makes it still, always arriving at the same place, curling against the earth that holds his master. Perhaps in his old age, he feels the closeness of death himself, but this does not trouble him. To Bobby, the grave is not an ending, but a tether. It holds him to his purpose, as steady as the stars hold the night. There are moments when the people worry. On a stormy night, when wind rattles the trees and rain lashes against the stones, they wonder if Bobby can endure much longer. Yet each morning, there he is, wet but unyielding, his dark eyes bright with determination. Time, it seems, bends around him but does not break him. He becomes a paradox, the embodiment of frailty and strength at once. The city counts the years almost without realizing it. 14 winters, 14 cycles of snow and blossom, of mourning turned into quiet reverence. Few leaves, even among humans, are marked by such a single, unwavering devotion. The townspeople begin to say, half in jest and half in awe, that Bobby has outlived even memory itself, that he is as eternal as the kirkyard stones. And yet, beneath this admiration lies an unspoken question: how long can it last? Time spares no creature, no matter how faithful. The years gather, pressing against him like the weight of a tide. Bobby grows old before their eyes, but still he holds his vigil. His presence is a comfort, but also a reminder of the inevitable, that one day even he must fade. Still, for now, he waits. The turning of seasons is no longer counted by calendars, but by his presence. As long as Bobby remains, the people feel anchored, reminded that constancy is possible even in a world that shifts like sand. His waiting has become more than loyalty to one man. It has become a gift to the city, a living parable of endurance. Each night, as the gates close and darkness settles over Greyfriars, Bobby curls close to the earth as he has done for years. Each morning, he rises again, and so the years turn, like pages in a storybook, carrying the city forward, carrying the dog deeper into legend, and carrying devotion into a place beyond time itself. And so, as Bobby grows older, and the years gather like leaves around him, the city begins to wonder what will happen when time at last overtakes him. The answer will arrive soon, carried quietly on the weight of age and the hush of inevitability. The years have a way of softening even the hardest stones, yet laws are not softened by time. They come in proclamations and notices, in words stamped by authority, carrying the heavy seal of order. Edinburgh, like many growing cities of the 19th century, faces a problem: stray dogs wandering the streets, spreading disease, biting children, and troubling merchants. To govern a city is to guard it, and so ordinances are passed. Strays without owners are to be destroyed. The law is blunt, without poetry. It does not know the difference between a neglected cur and a faithful terrier who keeps his vigil. To the written statute, Bobby is nothing more than an unlicensed dog, and in this, the little guardian of Greyfriars finds himself suddenly vulnerable. His devotion, which had carried him through 14 long years of waiting, now places him at the mercy of ink and parchment, of clerks and constables. Whispers pass through the city. People know the law. They know, too, that Bobby has no master to purchase a license, no family to claim him, no one to argue his case in the chambers of authority. His friends are many, but his protector is gone. The man beneath the soil, the watchman whose grave he guards. And so the question arises, will the law erase what memory has preserved? The townsfolk murmur anxiously. Butchers who once fed him shake their heads. Children, now grown, remember the small figure they once watched through the gate and wonder if this is the end. The kirkyard itself seems heavy with silence, as though the stones hold their breath. For how could the city allow the destruction of its own symbol of loyalty? Yet the law does not listen to sentiment. Then, in a gesture as unexpected as it is profound, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, the city's highest civic authority, steps forward. He is a man accustomed to decisions about streets and taxes, about order and safety. His desk is usually crowded with papers, not tales of dogs. Yet, even he has felt the quiet weight of Bobby's story. He has walked the streets, seen the terrier waiting at Greyfriars, and recognized in that waiting something greater than law itself. And so, in 1867, the Lord Provost pays for Bobby's license and collar from his own purse. With this simple act, he grants the little dog not only protection but legitimacy. Bobby is no longer a stray, but a citizen in his own right, recorded and acknowledged by the city he has come to embody. The collar is small, but it carries immense meaning. Made of leather, it circles Bobby's neck like a crown, not of power, but of belonging. On it is fastened a brass plate, engraved with words that bind him forever to Edinburgh. Greyfriars Bobby, from the Lord Provost, 1867, licensed. It is more than a license, it is a proclamation. The city itself has claimed him. No longer can he be dismissed as an unnamed wanderer. No longer can he be swept away in the cruelty of ordinances. He belongs, not to one man, but to all. The people breathe easier. Children smile again when they see the glint of brass upon his fur. The butchers, relieved, continue to feed him. Travellers lean in to read the inscription, their eyes softening at the words. And Bobby, unaware of the peril that brushed so close, continues his vigil as if nothing has changed. He does not know of licenses or laws. He knows only the grave, the bond, the waiting. Yet around him, the city exhales in gratitude, for his loyalty has been spared. The collar becomes a symbol as enduring as the vigil itself. To touch it is to touch the moment when law bent to love, when authority stepped aside for loyalty. In its brass gleam, Edinburgh sees itself reflected, not as a city of rules alone, but as a city capable of mercy, capable of reverence for devotion that no ordinance can extinguish. This act changes more than Bobby's fate. It transforms him into something larger. No longer merely a figure of local affection, he becomes the ward of Edinburgh, the little guardian sanctified by civic decree. When strangers hear of him now, they do not ask if the story is true. They see the collar, the inscription, the proof. And they carry that proof with them, spreading Bobby's fame beyond the kirkyard walls, across Britain, across oceans. Yet beneath all this, Bobby remains what he always was, a small dog lying by a grave through cold and heat, through daylight and dusk. The collar does not change him, though it protects him. The law might have erased him, but the compassion of one man, an authority moved by love, ensured that the vigil endures. And so the years continue. Bobby grows older still, his body frail, his movements slow, yet the collar gleams against his fur, a quiet reminder that he is not forgotten, not endangered, not alone. He is Edinburgh's guardian, protected by law even as he defies the limits of time. The kirkyard watches, the city listens, and Bobby, small and silent, teaches them all that devotion is stronger than decree, that loyalty can outlast even the reach of law. And yet, as the collar glints against his aging fur, another truth begins to press upon the city's heart. Even the most protected life cannot escape the passage of time. Soon, the vigil itself will face its final hour. Stories have a way of escaping their beginnings. They slip beyond the walls that confine them, carried on voices, etched into journals, whispered across taverns, and penned in books. What begins as a quiet truth becomes, in time, a shared memory. And so it is with Bobby. For years, his vigil at Greyfriars is known only to the people of Edinburgh. The butchers who feed him, the children who watch him, the merchants who pause in their walks to nod at his small, faithful form. Yet in time, word of the little dog spreads beyond the city's closes and wins. Travellers arrive, drawn not only to the grandeur of Edinburgh Castle or the solemn halls of Holyrood, but to a kirkyard where devotion curls in the shape of a small terrier. They come with curiosity at first. Is it true, they ask, that a dog has waited 14 years at his master's grave? And then they see him with their own eyes, the wiry coat, the dark, watchful gaze, the steady presence by the mound of earth. What they encounter is no embellishment, no fable told by children. It is reality, breathing and alive, carrying the quiet weight of truth. Writers, too, find their way to Greyfriars. They record what they see, their pens pressing Bobby's vigil into words that will travel farther than his small paws ever could. Some write with sentiment, some with awe, some with the measured tone of observation. Each retelling carries a different shade of meaning, but all circle the same heart. Loyalty that does not waver, love that does not die. The newspapers take up the story, printing columns that capture imaginations well beyond Scotland. In London, readers sit with tea and marvel at the tale of the faithful dog in Edinburgh. Across the sea, Americans hear of him and repeat the story around their own hearths. In Germany, in France, in distant lands where the kirkyard stones will never be touched by their feet, people picture him. Bobby, the small guardian of a grave, and so his fame grows. He becomes more than a dog, more even than a symbol of loyalty. He becomes a legend in the making, a tale that lives in the delicate space between truth and myth. For in the telling, details shift. Some say he waited 7 years, others 14. Some claim he left the grave at night, others insist he never strayed. The story bends with the breath of those who share it, shaped by memory, by imagination, by the longing in human hearts for devotion that endures. Yet through it all, Bobby himself remains unchanged. He does not know that newspapers speak of him, that travellers cross miles to see him, that writers pen his vigil into permanence. He does not seek fame. He asks nothing from the city but the chance to remain by the grave. For Bobby, life is not legend, it is presence. It is the earth beneath his paws, the stone beside his body, the memory he guards in silence. This contrast, the dog who seeks nothing and the world that offers him everything, makes the story all the more powerful. In a time when men chase renown, when nations hunger for power, here is a creature content with loyalty alone. He teaches, without ever speaking, that love is its own reward, that remembrance is wealth enough. Visitors leave gifts. Some place flowers by the grave, others leave coins, which are gathered for Bobby's care. Artists sketch his likeness, their lines preserving him on paper. Photographers, in the early age of the camera, attempt to capture his image, though the softness of his vigil is hard to fix in a single frame. Each effort, each gesture, seeks to hold him against the erosion of time. Children, hearing the tale, carry it with them into adulthood. They tell it of again to their own children, and so the story weaves itself into the fabric of Edinburgh's identity. Bobby is no longer just a dog. He is a thread in the city's memory, a note of tenderness in its long, grey song. Yet as the story spreads, it also becomes something more elusive. For with each retelling, the question arises: how much is fact and how much is legend? Did Bobby truly remain every night by the grave? Did he ever wander, if only briefly? Did he recognize the years, or was his waiting timeless, instinctual? The truth may blur, but the meaning does not. Whether by perfect fact or by gentle embellishment, the story endures because it speaks to what people long for: constancy, devotion, love that does not break even in the face of death. And perhaps this is the deeper truth, not the precise record of days and nights, but the resonance of loyalty that echoes through human hearts. Bobby becomes a mirror, reflecting humanity's yearning for permanence in a world that passes swiftly. His fame is less about him than about those who need his story: the weary, the grieving, the hopeful. Through Bobby, they see a possibility that love might anchor itself beyond the reach of time. By the late years of his vigil, Bobby is known to many who have never set foot in Edinburgh. His name is spoken with affection in places far removed from the kirkyard stones. And still, each morning, he wakes to the same small patch of earth, the same gravestone, the same silence. Fame swirls around him, but he remains unmoved. For the little dog's world is not measured in fame, but in devotion. The collar upon his neck gleams faintly in the light, a quiet sign of his protection. It tells travellers that he is no stray, no wanderer to be feared or pitied. He is licensed, recognised, claimed by the city. Yet his true claim is not in brass or leather. It is in the bond that binds him to the man beneath the soil. No inscription can capture that, no story can fully hold it. And so the tale of Bobby becomes twofold. There is the living dog, old and steadfast, waiting by the grave. And there is the legend spreading beyond him, carried into places he will never see. Together, they form something rare, a story that is both history and parable, both fact and symbol. In the end, perhaps it does not matter where truth ends and legend begins. For what people remember is not the number of years, not the exact pattern of his days, but the essence of him, the small guardian of love that will not let go. Bobby's fame is not his own doing, but the gift of those who look upon him and see in his waiting a reflection of their deepest hopes. And so, far beyond the kirkyard, far beyond Edinburgh, Bobby lives on, not only in the flesh but in the imagination of the world. His fame is not loud, not triumphant, but gentle, like a candle carried through darkened halls, lighting the way for those who believe in love's endurance. And yet, as Bobby's story spreads across the world, another story unfolds quietly in the kirkyard itself. The story of age, of weariness, of a little dog whose long vigil is drawing slowly, tenderly toward its end. The years have worn their soft grooves into Bobby's fur. Once it shone with the eager sheen of youth, quick to bristle with alertness, quick to rise with energy. Now, the hair around his muzzle carries a pale frost, and his body stoops low to the ground, his legs stiffened by time. Yet in the stillness of Greyfriars Kirkyard, where seasons drift like clouds, his presence remains steady. He is old now, older than many of the children who once pointed and whispered. There's Bobby, older than some of the young men who first noticed him, now grown and gone. The city turns, but the dog endures. In the quiet mornings, when mist gathers low and the bells of St. Giles toll the hours with solemn weight, Bobby still takes his place by the grave. His small body curls at the head of John Gray's resting place, as though to shield it from the long forgetfulness of time. His bones ache, and his breathing is slower, yet his vigil has not broken. What began as one night of grief, stretched into 2, then into years, has become the very rhythm of his existence. Children who once offered him crusts of bread have grown into parents themselves, and they bring their own little ones to see him. They point, not with surprise now, but with reverence. The story has become something more than curiosity. It has turned into legend, even while the little dog still walks among them. Bobby does not know this. He knows only the earth beneath his paws, the stone against which he leans, and the invisible tether that still binds him to the man he once followed through fog and rain. The city itself has changed. Gas lamps flicker with steadier light, new shops open along the cobbled streets, carriages grow more ornate, their wheels rattling in brighter paint. But in Greyfriars, time is slower, stretched out like the silence between tolls of the bell. Among the weathered stones, Bobby's watch makes even centuries feel close. Each step he takes around the kirkyard feels like an echo, each pause like a prayer that requires no words. Winter presses hard on his frail body. The winds that whip down from the north bite at his thinning coat. Where once he would leap at the rustle of a passerby or lift his head sharply at a crow's cry, now his ears move more slowly, as though weighed by years. He sleeps longer, sometimes drifting off with his nose against the cold ground, his dreams a haze of remembered footsteps. In them, John Gray still walks, lantern in hand, his shadow stretching long along the cobblestones. In those dreams, Bobby is not old. He runs again, quick and eager, close at his master's side. The people of Edinburgh watch with tenderness. They know, even if the dog does not, that his time is drawing near. A hush surrounds his presence, as though to disturb him would be to disturb something sacred. Bakers and butchers still bring him food, though he eats less. Children still smile, though their laughter is softened by care. He is no longer a curiosity to be spoken of with wonder, but a quiet reminder that even the smallest lives can carve the deepest marks. There are days now when Bobby hardly stirs. The stone of Greyfriars feels almost like a bed made for him, the grass his pillow. His once bright eyes have dulled, yet they still turn faithfully to the mound of earth where John lies. Perhaps he does not know the passing of years as people do. Perhaps, in his heart, it is still the first night, the first morning after the burial, and he is still waiting for John to return. Time is a human burden, devotion is something else entirely. On a mild morning, when the air is neither heavy with snow nor thick with rain, Bobby's breathing grows shallow. The sky above is pale, almost translucent, as though heaven itself leans low to witness the end of a vigil. A few townsfolk notice that the little dog is still, his head resting where it always has, his small body curled in its familiar posture. They approach quietly, not wishing to startle him, but there is no need. His watch has ended. Without fanfare, without sound, Bobby has slipped away, as gently as a candle flame yielding to the night. The kirkyard feels different in that moment. Empty, though filled with graves. Silent, though surrounded by the stirrings of the city. Bobby's absence is more profound than the presence of stone or earth. For 14 years he stood as the living pulse of Greyfriars, a reminder that love, once kindled, does not obey the boundaries of death. Now, with his small form stilled, the people are left to carry the memory forward. The grave where he kept watch does not change. John Grey lies, as he has always lain, beneath the cold earth, beneath the carved stone. But the story has doubled now, 2 lives woven into one. Man and dog, separated by death, yet joined in memory. Visitors begin to come, not only to see the burial site of John Grey, but to see where Bobby once lay. The vigil itself has become a new kind of monument. The people of Edinburgh grieve in their quiet way. Some shed tears, though he was never their dog. Some bow their heads, though they never held his leash. It is not grief for a pet, but grief for something larger, more elusive, grief for loyalty itself, for devotion that seems almost beyond human capacity. Bobby's passing feels like the dimming of a lantern in a world too full of wandering shadows. The city continues to move, as it always does. Carriages pass, children laugh, merchants call their wares. But within Greyfriars, an invisible stillness remains. Those who walk past the grave know that they are in the presence of something that does not die. A dog's life is brief. Devotion, however, stretches beyond breath and bone. Bobby's story does not end in silence. Already, voices speak of him, in taverns, in homes, in letters carried beyond Scotland's borders. His watch has ended, but his tale has begun anew. The world beyond Edinburgh will hear of the little terrier who would not leave his master's grave, who gave his years to love and memory. In this way, death does not erase him, it enshrines him, and so Greyfriars holds not just the bones of John Grey, but the spirit of Bobby. The stones stand, as they always have, yet they carry a deeper hush, a weight of memory. The little dog's last watch has become every watch thereafter, a reminder that devotion does not fade when the body does. The kirkyard grows quiet without Bobby's small figure, yet his absence deepens his presence. And in the silence he leaves behind, a new chapter begins, not of flesh and fur, but of bronze and memory, where the city itself will take up his vigil. The streets of Edinburgh know how to hold stories. They clutch them between cobblestones, thread them through mist, and keep them alive in the corners where lamplight gathers. When Bobby's last breath left him, and the kirkyard grew still without his small form curled upon the grave, the city seemed unwilling to let the story fade into the shadows of memory. For 14 years, people had watched him. For 14 years, he had reminded them of a kind of devotion that felt older than stone, older even than the city itself. When he was gone, silence pressed down. But silence never lasts in a place that knows how to tell tales. Out of absence, something new began to take shape. It began with words spoken in quiet tones over hearth fires and in the stalls of the market. Parents told their children, "That little dog you saw at Greyfriars, he has gone." But the tale was not told with sadness alone. It carried reverence. Reverence has a way of bending words into legend. Soon, it was not only the people of Edinburgh who knew Bobby's name. Travellers heard whispers of the story, wrote letters about him, carried the memory into distant lands. And where stories travel, monuments follow. In 1873, just 2 years after Bobby's death, a decision was made. Edinburgh would raise a statue, not for a king, not for a general, not for a statesman, but for a dog, a Skye Terrier, small in body, yet immense in the echo he left behind. The city commissioned a fountain, its base sturdy and dignified, its upper form crowned with the likeness of Bobby himself. The sculptor, William Brodie, understood what he was asked to capture. It was not the likeness of fur or the exact tilt of ears. It was devotion itself, wrought in bronze. He cast the little dog as if still waiting, still looking, still poised in eternal vigil. The statue was placed near the entrance to Greyfriars Kirkyard, where Bobby had spent his life, as though to guard the very threshold between the living and the dead. When the fountain was unveiled, the people gathered in numbers. The bronze shone dark in the Scottish light, and water trickled from its spouts for those who passed by, a gift of refreshment for man and beast alike. It was a simple monument, yet it carried a weight heavier than stone. It was the acknowledgement of a truth too tender to be left in silence. Bobby's life had not been wasted. His years had not slipped into obscurity. The city had remembered, and now it would always remember. Children were the first to love the statue most. They came with wide eyes, standing on tiptoe to reach his head. They stretched small hands to touch his nose, to pat the bronze as though greeting the real Bobby once more. In time, a tradition grew. To touch Bobby's nose was to bring luck, to carry a bit of his loyalty into one's own days. The bronze nose grew shiny, polished by countless fingers across generations. Through that simple touch, the story passed from one childhood to the next, never dimming, never lost. The fountain itself became a meeting place, a marker, a presence that felt alive. It stood as a reminder that memory is not only kept in books or spoken in whispers. It can also take shape in metal and water, in something the hand can feel, the eyes can see, the lips can speak of without fear of forgetting. For Edinburgh, Bobby's statue carried something rare. It gave the city a symbol of loyalty that belonged to everyone. Kings come and go, their monuments towering with grandeur, yet often speaking only to the powerful. But Bobby belonged to the butcher who fed him, the child who smiled at him, the widow who wept with him, the labourer who saw in him a reflection of his own endurance. His monument was for the ordinary, for the unseen, for the humble truth that love is not diminished by the lowliness of its vessel. As years passed into decades and decades into centuries, Bobby's story did not wither. If anything, it grew richer, wrapped in the fabric of Edinburgh's identity. Visitors came from distant lands, guided to Greyfriars not only for the history of the kirkyard, but for the small statue at its edge. Tourists, scholars, poets, and wanderers all placed their hands upon the bronze terrier and felt the soft tremor of his story pass through them. In this way, the little dog who once waited in silence became a voice louder than any sermon, a reminder that fidelity is the purest form of love. Legends have a way of bending truth. Some argue that Bobby's tale was embellished, polished like the very nose of the statue. Some question whether his vigil was truly so unbroken, whether the years were counted as faithfully as the story suggests. Yet, in the end, the truth of detail matters less than the truth of meaning. What lingers in the hearts of people is not the ledger of hours Bobby kept, but the certainty that he embodied something they long for: steadfastness, The refusal to abandon love even when all reason says it is time to walk away. The statue, in this sense, is not just Bobby's. It is humanity's, a mirror in bronze. It reflects the quiet ache we all feel, the wish to be remembered, the hope to be loved beyond our absence. In every hand that touches the polished nose, there is a silent prayer. Let me be loyal. Let me be loved. Let my memory endure when I am gone. Seasons turn over the statue. Snow drapes it in white silence. Rain slicks its surface until it gleams. Spring scatters blossoms at its base. Summer light warms its back. The bronze endures, as Bobby endured, year after year, weather after weather, unshaken. In the stillness of night, when the streets are hushed, the statue stands alone, yet not lonely. It waits as Bobby once waited. Writers took up Bobby's story, and books carried it further still. The statue became not only a local symbol, but a global one. Through ink and paper, through photograph and memory, the little dog's vigil stretched across oceans. A Skye Terrier, no larger than a man's arm, had become an emblem of fidelity recognized by strangers who had never walked the streets of Edinburgh. In this way, Bobby's story joined the great lineage of human memory where truth and legend intertwine until they are inseparable. Even as centuries press onward, the fountain remains. The water flows, the bronze gleams, the nose is touched, the story is told. Children of the 21st century stand where children of the 19th once stood, their laughter carrying the same wonder, their hands carrying the same warmth. In that continuity lies the quiet miracle: Bobby is not gone. His life, though brief, has outrun time. The city, in raising the statue, did more than honor a dog. It honored devotion itself. It built a monument not to power, but to tenderness, not to victory, but to loyalty. In a world where empires crumble and monuments to conquest decay, Bobby's fountain still stands. Perhaps it will outlast even those grander statues, because love, humble, ordinary, faithful love, endures longer than marble and stronger than iron. For those who pause before the fountain, the air holds a stillness. They may not know John Gray's name. They may not know the exact years of Bobby's vigil, but they know what they feel. They know that before them stands a reminder that no devotion is ever wasted, that even the smallest lives can ripple across time. And so the bronze memory shines. Children touch the nose. Lovers stand close and whisper. Travelers lean in for photographs. Each act, each gesture adds to the story, layering it deeper into the city's soul. Bobby's watch has ended, but his presence has not. He waits still, in bronze and legend, his vigil now eternal. The fountain trickles on, bronze gleaming in every season, a symbol of love outlasting its own life. And as the city remembers Bobby in metal and story, we too are left with a question. What monuments of devotion will we leave behind for those who come after us? And so we leave the kirkyard, our steps hushed, as though not to disturb the little bronze figure who keeps his endless vigil. Bobby waits still, not only in stone, but in the story carried from heart to heart, a story of love that lingered long after footsteps faded. In him we see ourselves, our yearning to be remembered, our quiet wish that loyalty might tether us across the dark river of time. Tonight, his devotion becomes a lantern in the mist, reminding us that even the smallest lives can cast a light that does not go out. Though the centuries shift, though Edinburgh's cobblestones wear thin, the echo of his waiting hums on, soft as a lullaby, steady as a heartbeat. Thank you, dear listener, for sharing this gentle hour. It is no small thing to give your stillness to a story. Here, in this quiet corner we share, you are part of something timeless, the hush of history folding itself around us like a blanket. Now, let the day loosen its hold. Let the weight slip from your shoulders. May your dreams carry you kindly, as if walking beside that faithful dog beneath the hush of night. Sleep well, knowing that devotion and love, in their simplest, truest forms, are the threads that bind us all. This has been the Sleeping Hourglass, where the past tucks you in, and if this story has brought you peace, know that you are always welcome to return whenever the night calls you back to the quiet turning of time. Until then, rest deeply, dream gently, and let the candle of tonight's tale burn low into silence.